Have you ever considered how what you fundamentally believe affects what you write for stories, what you create, how you put forward your characters, your ideas, even their opposites, not just the good guys, but the bad guys as well, and the lens that you look through, how that affects the characters you suppose think a certain way when you craft things? Have you ever wondered if what you believe might be the problem? Hey guys, welcome to the M2M project. Today's video is going to be just another simple kind of off-the-cuff thing because I'm working on something that I'll be presenting in the days ahead that's a bit more involved. And I just wanted to take some time to tell you what that is going to be somewhat about. Like I said in the intro, I realized that it is our belief structures that often inform the characters we create, even the stories that we tell and the environments that we put them in. They're all affected by our core belief systems. And a lot of people don't challenge those systems. They get along with them just fine. I realized that in my journey, my process of screenwriting and storytelling, trying to connect what I believe with people, I wound up in a situation where I started questioning some of those fundamental beliefs years ago. And that had a drastic effect on what it is I was trying to say through the stories I was telling. And so it's because of that that I feel that belief systems are such an important thing to explore. Not that everybody feels that urgency, but sometimes the issue is that we just take them for granted. It's what we always believed. It's what we were taught growing up, or it was part of the community environment that we were in, our peer group, what have you, and it never became necessary to question those things. But the world's changing pretty fast, and a lot of times the things that we believe in are challenged, and that's not always a bad thing. Those ideas being challenged force us to look at the parameters of reality itself sometimes. So that is something that I have felt compelled to journey into a bit more deeply. It may not be what everyone's down for or into, and that's fine too, because we'll pivot down the line again. But for the next few videos, I thought what I would be doing would be looking at what it was that caused me to step away from the faith that I grew up with, and how that caused me to pivot in a different direction, not one lacking in faith per se, but just a journey toward where I was going to find my answers in that divine source, the divine source consciousness, if you want to call it that, of all things. And for me, that was something different from what I grew up with, which also impacted the stories that I was creating, the ideas I was trying to generate, how I defined the morality of those characters, what that meant the good guys and the bad guys looked like. A lot of that began to shift. It began to shift and change the metaphors that I would use in the stories that I was telling. And for me, metaphors are a very big part of what I utilize when I'm trying to craft a story. It's sort of my first step, if you will, in many cases, or very early on anyway, in coming up with a story idea. What is the deeper message? And what do these maybe surface pieces of entertainment mean on a metaphorical level? So that gets heavily shaken when you turn your whole world upside down and go in a whole new direction. And it's something worth considering. It may be something that some people who don't might want to look at. What are we taking for granted when we think about the things that we hold true? And if we looked at them a different way, or if we challenge those things, how might that affect the messages we're trying to convey through the fictions that we share or the nonfiction? How does that message carry? And what do you have to change about your own perspective if you change one dial on that box of ideas and systems of belief that we carry around with us? Just one change can reverberate through all kinds of things about how we look at the good guys and the bad guys, the necessary stories and the unnecessary stories, or the things that are symbolically superfluous or just part of a system that we took for granted but maybe doesn't really mean as much as we thought it did, or doesn't mean what we thought it did at the very least. So anyway, in the days and weeks to come, what I'll be challenging you to do is, or maybe even giving you permission to do, in a sense, because I think there are a lot of people out there who may have some of these questions locked up in the back of their mind, or they're things they think about but don't want to say, and maybe someone else kind of exposing how their journey unfolded, and in part how that started to affect the ideas that they were telling themselves about maybe themselves, because that's another aspect of how we come up with stories. The things that we speak to ourselves about end up being the things that we talk about on the page quite a bit as well. And when those things take a radical shift, or we're willing to start asking ourselves these very fundamental questions about what we believe at the roots of ourselves, that can affect things quite a bit. So anyway, I won't elaborate too much more. That's what's coming in the weeks ahead. If there's something that you would like to see me cover about this breakdown in the transition process or the change process in a belief system that affects you artistically, it affects you as a human being, it affects your perspective on life, please share in the comments some of your own stories or some of your own questions about these things. Maybe we can address those as well as the weeks unfold on this particular topic. And as an artist, I'd be interested in knowing how belief systems have either shifted or not, and how that affects your process. Because again, when it comes to what we find important, what we value, what we believe, a lot of that gets woven into these stories. It's not all just about entertainment from the having fun standpoint. There are lessons we want our stories to carry, and they have to come from somewhere. Fundamentally, they come from what we believe in at our core. So I'll sign off for now. Looking forward to talking to you about this in the weeks ahead. But remember, fight the darkness, put truth in the story, and we'll see you next time.